Hello and welcome. I'm Edmund, and in this video I'm going to share with you a huge improvement I got as a result of modifying my P320's stock parts. I wanted to share the significant upgrade because I've yet to find anything online, either on Reddit, YouTube, on any forums, where someone mentions this or even something like it, which seems rather strange given the result that you get to see here. Now, I unfortunately did not document or index any of the testing I did before I modified the gun, since I originally didn't think about sharing this with anybody. So during this video, I will be using the testing data done by another YouTube channel called The Sig Guy, who used a testing jig on a stock P320 before sending his pistol off to a well-known and well-loved gunsmith called the Sig Armor, who was doing a competition style action job, something like that. I don't remember what it's called, a trigger job. And I believe the data is going to be very useful here because I can give you three results. The first one being the stock SIG components. The second being the professionally upgraded trigger job, and third, the result of my modified trigger job. Now, that being said, I should probably note that the SIG Armor is a professionally certified armorer, and I don't really know what the SIG Armor actually does for his trigger job. It could be vastly different from what I did, or it could be exactly the same. That's his secret sauce, so I don't know what he does. Now, I should probably add a disclaimer here. I'm not a professional and I'm not a gunsmith. I'm not a certified armorer, and I don't recommend doing these type of modifications. This is just to show you my result and how I did it. Now, I would recommend, like I did, to have a professional at least look at it or even do it. And also, when I'm going through all my my material here, I should also note that my testing equipment is, I have a Fowler caliper here. I have a Wheeler trigger pull scale, the analog one. So I got some quality tools, but they're not the highest or most elite caliber of testing equipment. I don't have any jigs or anything like that. So take that for what it is. Now, in this video, I'm going to be breaking it down into three components, I think. First, I'm going to show you how my modified trigger operates. We're right now inside my FCUs, all the modified parts, so that's what I have here. And while I do that, I'm going to be referencing the data that I told you about that I found on the SIG Guy's channel. Then I think what I'll do is I'll pull out the FCU and show you what my FCU looks like. And then lastly, I will be using maybe some of these extra components I have. And then I can actually show you a demonstration of how and why those modifications that I did work, and how they interact with one another. And I think that would be helpful. All right, so let's get into it then. So let's go over this modified trigger. First, we'll verify that the gun is safe, and it is. So, let's go in this fashion. We'll go the stock OEM test results, the SIG Armor's test results, and my modification test results, okay? So, trigger travel. So, let's go the full distance between full rest and all the way back. Trigger travel in the original stock parts is 0.440. The SIG Armor's trigger travel was reduced to 0.180. This modification resulted in a 0.181. So it's a substantial reduction from the stock parts. The take up, a little play there. take-up on the original stock parts were 0.195. The improvement from the SIG armor was 0.080, and my modification was able to achieve a 0.082. So again, this modification vastly improved the take-up over the original stock components. Creep, there's not much to say there. The original parts was 0.105. The SIG armor reduced it to 0.080, and my modification was 0.100. So not even much of an improvement over the original parts. Overtravel, original stock components, 0.140. The SIG armor achieved a reduction of 0.020. My modification reads at 0.022. So a little bit of an improvement there. I would say that the original components were not that great when it comes to Overtravel. I do know there's some aftermarket drop-in parts that you can do to also improve it, but I'm going to show you how to permanently improve it in a couple minutes. The reset, which is the most valuable number here. So the reset is vastly improved here, and I'm going to read to you first and then I'll show you. So original stock parts 0.250, the SIG armor reduced that to 0.100. My modification is a 0.115. So over the original stock parts, this modification is a massive improvement. So I'm going to just show that to you now. So there's the take up. Okay. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. So as you can see, huge improvement there. So I think the next thing I should do is probably take apart the gun, show you the FCU, and then after that I'll go over the demonstration of how to modify, or how the modified parts work together. Okay, so I removed the FCU from the grip, and I want to explain to you the three components that are being modified. So the sear, the trigger bar, and the trigger itself are the components being modified. Now, individually, they all affect the trigger job in their own way. So the reset is affected by the modification on the sear. The take-up is affected by the modification on the trigger bar, and the overtravel is the modification done on the trigger. That's individually. Obviously, we know that they interact within the FCU, and I'm going to show you how that interaction goes so that you may better understand what I did. So if you look inside your FCU, you'll notice that your trigger bar, that portion, this portion right here of the trigger bar, actually sits behind the sear. And as you pull your trigger, the sear starts to pivot on an axis, and at a certain point, the gun will fire. The slide will go back and you're put into reset position, which is the sear sitting on top of the trigger bar. So at this point, your trigger's pulled back still, and you're going to release it for a reset. So as you slowly release the trigger bar will move back, and then eventually the sear will fall in front of the trigger bar, and that is an audible click, so that you know it's been reset. So now you can pull it again, and so on and so forth, and that is the basic mechanics of the firearm. And because it's so simple, you can see that there's room for improvement there. My theory, when I was looking at this, was that if we could shorten the plane, specifically this plane right here, then we could possibly have the trigger bar reset sooner, right? So instead of sliding the whole distance, we can actually shorten that out. Okay. So what I did is I took a look at the sear, and that distance there I found to be at 0.060, and I started shaving that down till I got it to 0.049. when I got it to 0.049 and I put it all back together, I realized the trigger felt amazing at that point. I didn't feel like I needed to go further. Now, I mentioned to you earlier today that the reset on the original was 0.250, which is a pretty long reset. And mine was 0.115. Now, the SIG Armor's was at 0.100, so it was shorter. However, I personally didn't feel comfortable really going too much further, as I didn't want to change the functionality of the gun, how it's supposed to function, and going more than what I already did, that's unknown territory for me. So I just didn't touch it. Now, how does that look inside the FCU? So here's mine, and I'm hoping that you can see with the amount of light I have. So there, that here is the Sear, and right behind it here, that's the trigger bar. Now I'm going to see if I can add a little bit more light here. There you go. So as you can see, at that point, the trigger bar is behind the Sear. And you can also see how short that distance on that plane is now, right? In comparison to that there. Okay, so it's not a lot, but once you do it, you realize what a drastic change very little did. Now, as an additional reference, I'm going to show you the operation in the modified FCU. I want to show you the interaction between the Sear and the trigger bar. So currently the trigger is set in its normal position and the Sear is in front of the trigger bar. So I'm going to pull the trigger and that's the movement to fire. So right there, that's the take up, then fire. Now, once it fires and the slide goes back, now it's waiting for a reset. And that's the position it's in, where the Sear is sitting on top of the trigger bar. And I'm going to slowly release the trigger until it clicks back. That's the audible click I mentioned. So I'll do that one more time. The gun's been fired, and now you're looking to reset. That's it. Now, that distance, can it be shortened? I don't know, but that distance there is the full reset. Once you hear that click, you're ready to fire again. So anyways, that is the Sear, and that's how it works, and that's the effect. Now, the trigger bar itself has its own modification. It's a very simple modification. Actually, both the trigger and the trigger bar are very simple. So, as you can see, there is a tiny buildup of welding material here. And I just used a Norton stone to gradually shave off fractions until I put it back in the gun, and it felt very nice. So I'll show you this here, how it interacts within the FCU, okay? So, and right behind, here we go. So there is the interaction. So you have the Sear housing and you have the trigger bar. And right in between, you see that little buildup of material. Now I'm going to show you the take up, okay? So there's the take up right there, okay? So the original SIG components have a take up of 0.195, and this here is a 0.082, okay? Now, as you can see, had that welding material not been there, the trigger bar would have to travel that distance to the back to hit the wall of the Sear housing. So that's what that buildup does. Now, you might be wondering, is it possible to just have zero take up? And, technically I could just fill in that gap with additional material and just call it a day. But I also noticed that, at that point, the safety also starts to move, and I didn't want to risk removing the safety off the firearm. So I just left it to a nice, comfortable position, and it feels good already again, so there was no need for me to continuously try to improve that. There are drop-in parts, for example, the Apex forward set trigger bar, which I believe by the name forward set, all that means is that they change the geometry so that it sits slightly a little bit more forward. Maybe I don't own that part, and I've never ordered it before, so I don't know how it actually functions, but I'm guessing that that might be the functionality of that, because people do say they have an improvement there on the take-up, right? So that's the modification done to the trigger bar, and that's the interaction it has inside the FCU. The last modification is one done to the trigger. Now I'll show it to you inside the FCU first, since it's already put together, and then I'll take the trigger out so I can show you what it looks like outside. Okay, so if I can hopefully zoom you in, okay, in here, I'll get you some additional light. Right there, you see an additional weld point. Okay, now that weld allows for a little extension so that when you pull the trigger, it hits that stop pin a little bit sooner. Okay, now I'll point out, if there's too much material in there, and let's say that's where it stops right here, then the gun may not fire because the sear might not be able to move far enough down to fire. If there is, let's say there's, I'm going to call it the perfect amount. Let's say it's just like 99.9% of the way there. It will actually fire, but it feels super sloppy, very mushy. If you go a little bit further than what you probably think you need to go, it has that nice, solid, tactile click. And one thing you'll notice, and I'm going to go back to the Apex kit one more time. That kit, I believe, used to or still does come with something called a overstop bushing or something like that. Overtravel, stop bushing, something. Anyways, that piece was just, I think probably an aluminum or plastic tube. This is just an aluminum tube I used to use, and that's used to slide over the stop pin. And the thickness of the tube is basically like adding a little weld point to the trigger, right? So, but it's just a non-permanent solution, whereas welding is obviously a permanent solution. So what I did is I added additional weld material, and I ground it down just to, you have that nice feeling when it fired, and it was very tactile, very firm, and it felt good. So I'm going to pull the trigger out of the FCU and show you that weld up close. Okay, so there it is. And here I'll bring over the trigger bar. Okay, so those are them together. You can note that there is barely any material added to my trigger. Now, guns are built in mass production. There's tolerances and things like that. So I'm not going to give you my distance here. Well, I can tell you the trigger bar, I believe, is 0.018 or something like that. But in terms of height, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that every gun is going to be the exact same. So I would say these are all trial and error. You have to take your time, do your work, take it all out, put it back together, test, and so on and so forth, till you get the right feel. So now it's all back together. And that's pretty much it for the modification. A few thoughts or questions people might have would be, how does this hold up? So I've put about 500 rounds through this pistol since the modification, and not one misfire, nothing. It's been a fantastic, solid. It feels great. The entire time I put it through its paces at the range. So I feel very confident with this product and how it turned out. Also, does it void of warranty? Probably, maybe. I don't know is the real answer, but I do always have, spare parts that I have, unmodified, should I ever need to put it back together. But I doubt at this point that that's going to be necessary. It's not like this is a brand new pistol, either under warranty or something like that. So, take that for what it is. I'm aware also that trigger jobs on most guns require modification of the sear. So once again, I want to point out that if you're going to do something like this, make sure you verify with a professional to make sure your gun remains safe and that the modifications don't impact or break laws or just change how the gun is supposed to operate. I think that's it's very critical and is worth repeating. I think that's pretty much it, guys. I hope this video helps somebody. I shot this video. I didn't even intend to originally even post anything like this, but after putting the gun through its paces and seeing what a dramatic change these modifications made, I felt it was worth sharing with the community. And you guys have taught me everything I know. I've had so much more enjoyment out of my gun because of you guys. So I'm hoping to bring that back. And I'm also hoping by putting this video out there that somebody might be inspired to make an improvement on my improvement. And so that, and hopefully they share it too, so that the community can grow, and we can all kind of like patents. Hopefully, one patent leads to a better invention, and we can all enjoy our firearms that much more. Anyways, thank you for watching the video. This is the very first video I've ever shot ever, and I just started this channel just so I can have a platform to put this video somewhere. So probably if I get good feedback, I will start putting out more content. I do have, for example, I've installed gunsmith fit barrels and made other modifications, and the things that I've learned, I could start giving people that kind of information with the type of, I guess, education style that I provide. So leave me a comment or subscribe, whatever it is that people do these days, and I hope you guys learn something. All right, take care. Bye.